Back on House Sub for Senate Bill 291, we've had some discussions again today. And so we've got a conceptual amendment we want to start with, and I think there's a total of maybe 3 additional amendments. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie to explain the conceptual amendment because it's a little hefty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the way I understand it would be that the Senate offer would be to take the contents of the bill as they exist now, and then essentially what they want to do is sunset all the changes on July 1st of 2026. The way that we would do that is to leave the sections intact as they are, but then we would also bring in all the sections with the changes in the bill looking as though they're law and amend those as of July 1st, 2026 to revert all the changes back to the way that the current law is. That's my understanding of the big piece. That there's one more piece that's my understanding, which would be to remove the criminal provisions, making it a felony for the unauthorized disclosure by the employees of the CTO.
So what this essentially does is leave all the work that the committee has done on the House side, gives us time in the Senate to also investigate, what we didn't have time to do, and then make a decision on that sunset by the end of session next year and see where we are. So 2026. So we've got 18 months essentially, or a little bit more, 2 sessions to work on that, and which I think makes a lot of sense because this is a big bill with a lot of moving parts. And that gives us a chance to do our work, and I think we're agreed with that and wanted to see. We're good? Oh, Madam Chair. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We agree to the conceptual amendments.
And we will have those drafted by veto session so that we'll have the actual language by then. It's a fairly big lift for Natalie to get that done in the next 48 hours. So I don't, she wants to sleep sometime before Monday. So I think we're in good shape there. And then I think you have some amendments you would also like to bring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. There's the first one, which is dealing with the regents. Is that this one? Okay. So it's dealing with the regents. So one of the things that they wanted to put in here was that basically the .edu instead of .gov is what they use, and so it made sense to keep them as a .edu instead of migrating with the rest of government to .gov. Additionally, in here, we had it to where we specified and just added a little bit more clarity that the Regents institutions themselves are going to be working to develop this plan and develop plans with the rest of the executive branch. But we left KBOR itself in the migration plan with all the other agencies because we felt like that was an agency and there's a delineation between the two entities of Regents and KBOR. So that's basically what this amendment does. But I'll turn it over to the reviser just in case I missed something.
Sounds good. Senator Pittman.
Yeah, this sounds like it makes sense. Will this also be sunsetted?
Based on the conceptual amendment we just passed, I would assume everything in the bill is sunsetted.
Okay, if we're gonna, that sounds great.
Senator Kloos? I think we're good with that. That sounds good. And then another amendment.
This amendment is for the judiciary, one more time. So I got to give the judiciary a hard time. They're a bunch of attorneys and a bunch of judges, and so they like to get the legal language very precise. And so that is basically what this amendment does, is it continues to tweak the language just a little bit more. Let me make sure I read through this all. I mean, I will turn it over actually to the reviser at this point and let her go over all the
Yeah,
legal.
Natalie, if you'd like to cover that for us.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you already adopted one version of the judicial branch balloon, and that is reflected here. But there were a few further tweaks, and you'll see those underlined. So on page 2, where we're removing the word hardware in line 3, and then you'll see the underline that we're adding, so that estimated project cost to develop the cybersecurity program for all the judicial districts that complies with the CSF standard. And then down on page 3, instead of saying each judicial agency in line 23, it'll say for the Office of Judicial Administration.
So this allows them to start that planning that they wanted to do, correct, for the judicial branch? And
Yes, and keeping it within the judiciary and the judicial branch here. And then they can work for the next year and a half to be able to figure out all of the districts, because it was such a large chunk to take on at once.
Senator Pittman.
This is for Natalie. It says July 1st, 2024 for the NIS2 standard. Does that mean that they have to be in compliance for that? Does it mean that they can start planning at that date, or what does that date indicate?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pittman, so that date is what we're talking about there. All throughout the bill, we're requiring all of these entities to come into compliance with that CSF standard. And we're saying that we're talking about the CSF standard that exists as of July 1st of 2024. Yeah, and then if they come out with new standards and you guys like them and you want to adopt them, then we'll change that date to the newest one.
I think we're good with that. Okay. Oh, okay. Is there any more amendments?
No, Mr. Chairman, I did just want to remind you all that you did previously agree to an amendment related, this is a very technical issue related to post-audit with the legislative branch CETO, so that will be reflected in the agreement as well.
I think Senator Pittman has a conceptual.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you also, before I say this, working with us on this. I think you did great work. We are setting the standard for an eventual consolidation of beyond cybersecurity, so I think it's really important that we all work together on this. I really appreciate you being open to this. One thing though, Natalie, do we already have in here the 3 FTAs that the judicial branch requested for making the plan, since they didn't necessarily have the horsepower to do the planning during the planning horizon?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pittman, so it's my understanding that that is part of the first offer that was kind of made by the Senate. And my understanding of the agreement is, you know, the House is kind of accepting the changes that you made in those first 2 sections, so it would appropriate for the judicial branch. I will note that I think the number was a little bit off, and so we are going to work with the judicial branch to get that accurate number. I think it was too high based on what I've heard from the judicial branch. So that number, you know, by the time you have it in the conference committee report that you're voting on, you'll know the final number, but we'll work with them to get that. But that appropriation would be made as part of this.
The conceptual amendment was one that we talked about right at the beginning. Was I'd like to see the beyond just the speaker and the president of the Senate being notified, but the minority leader and of each chamber be notified in the same circumstances.
Senator Pittman, we're okay with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just to clarify, that's when the CISA audit failures. Okay.
I believe that's all the amendments we have. So at this point, I think we'll let you draft all this up, and then we'll conclude our work on this in veto session. Thank you very much. And I want to echo the comments of Senator Pittman. You have done a lot of good work, and we wanted to be able to work with you. We just want to have time to digest this all, so we appreciate your,
Mr. Chair, we thank you because we appreciate the willingness of the Senate to work with us as well. So